I found out about the $1 on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that's supposed to be boring. A quick stop at the attorney's office. A signature. A polite handshake. Then coffee before work. No big emotional family scene. No dramatic reading of the will with thunder in the background. Just paperwork and that stale office air that smells like toner and old carpet. And my name is Rachel. I'm 29. And in my family, I've always been the responsible one. The one who doesn't need much. The one who figures it out. My brother Evan has always been the one who needs support. If he messes up, it's a phase. If I struggle, it's a lesson. I sat in that conference room with my coat still damp from the rain, watching the attorney stack documents like he was building a neat little wall between my mother's life and whatever came next. There was a framed photo of Mom on a side table. Someone had brought it, probably Evan. She was smiling, that practiced smile she used in public, the one that made her look warm and unshakable. The kind of smile that makes you feel crazy for ever being hurt by her. Rachel Carter, the attorney said, scanning the page. And Evan Carter. Evan sat beside me in a dark blazer, cologne strong enough to announce him before he spoke. He looked calm. Too calm. Like someone showing up to pick up a package he already knew was his. I tried to keep my breathing even. I hadn't slept since the call. Your mom passed. Those words felt unreal, like I was watching my life through glass. I kept thinking there would be one last conversation, the one I'd imagined for years. The one where she finally saw me. The one where she said, "I know I didn't always treat you fairly." But grief doesn't wait for closure. Grief just shows up and takes what it wants. The attorney cleared his throat. I'll read the will as written. It's straightforward. He started with the simple parts. Funeral expenses. A small donation to a local charity. Then he moved to Evan. The property located at 118 Cedar Ridge Lane, he read, is bequeathed to my son, Evan Carter. My heart hit my ribs like a fist. The house. The house I grew up in. The house I'd painted when Mom got sick. The house where I sat at the kitchen table late at night sorting her medical bills because Evan couldn't handle stressful stuff. The attorney kept going, listing savings and account balance that made my stomach turn. Tens of thousands. Evan's mouth didn't even twitch. He sat there like it was weather. Like it was inevitable. Then the attorney said my name again and I forced my spine straight, forced my hands to stay still. Maybe, just maybe, there was something. Piece of jewelry. A letter. Anything that said I mattered. I heard the sentence, clean and precise, like a blade. My daughter Rachel is to receive $1. $1, not a small amount. Not a token. $1. And then the line that made the room tilt. Rachel is hereby considered fully satisfied. Fully satisfied. Like I was a bill. Like I was an obligation being closed out. My ears rang. Heat rushed to my face, then cold. I felt like I'd been pushed out of my own body while still sitting in the chair. Evan exhaled through his nose like he was mildly amused. The attorney looked up. There is no explanation attached. Just this language. Why? Slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it. It sounded small, like a kid asking for fairness on a playground. Evan spoke before the attorney could. Mom wanted clarity, he said softly, like he was the reasonable one. No drama. No fighting. No drama. No fighting. Because it's hard to fight when you've been handed a single dollar and told you're done. That was the point. I turned to him. You knew, I said. My voice didn't shake, but my chest did. He shrugged. She talked to me about it. He leaned in slightly, voice lower. She didn't want you trying to make everything about you. There it was. The old story. Rachel the difficult one. Evan the fragile one. Rachel asks questions, so Rachel becomes the problem. I let out one short laugh that sounded like it scraped my throat. Make everything about me? I repeated. I took her to appointments. I picked up her prescriptions. I covered the heating bill when you were between jobs for 6 months. Evan's expression didn't change. I'm just saying what she felt. Felt. In my family, feelings were used like a gavel. If Mom felt wronged, it didn't matter what actually happened. Her feelings became the truth. The attorney slid a pen across the table. If you sign here, it acknowledges receipt and understanding. You're not agreeing with it, just, I need a minute, I said, and my voice surprised me with how steady it was. I stood and walked to the window. Sighed. People moved through the rain like normal life was still happening. Cars. Umbrellas. Coffee cups. No one knew my mother had just reached from the grave and slapped me with a single dollar. I stared at the street and thought about the number. 420,000. That's what someone once said the house was worth when Mom refinanced. $420,000. And I got $1. Not forgotten. Not overlooked. Targeted. I turned back around and the attorney looked up expectantly. Evan watched me with that subtle impatience he always had when I didn't just fall in line. I put the pen down without touching it. I'm not signing today, I said. Evan's eyes narrowed. Seriously? I'm going to have this reviewed, I said. I want a full accounting. The attorney nodded professionally. Evan scoffed like I just announced I was suing gravity. You're going to embarrass yourself, he muttered. It's $1. You have nothing. I picked up my purse. I have questions, I said. And I'm done being told questions are disrespect. I walked out before my throat could betray me. The hallway smelled like lemon cleaner. My heels clicked on the tile like a countdown. By the time I stepped into the rain, I didn't cry. I felt something else, sharp, quiet anger. Kind that doesn't scream. The kind that organizes. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. A text from Evan. Don't tell the family. Let Mom rest. Let Mom rest. Even dead, she deserved peace. But I was supposed to swallow humiliation in silence. Like always. I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the message until my vision blurred. Then I whispered one word. Okay. Not okay like I accepted it. Okay like a switch flipped. Okay like, now it starts, and right then I made a decision I didn't even realize I was allowed to make. If I was going to be written out like I was nothing, then I was done acting like I deserved nothing. I was going to find out what happened. I was going to document every threat, every lie, every little family rule Evan tried to hide behind, and if that house was going to be the trophy Evan waved in my face, if it was going to be the symbol of how little I mattered, then I was going to change what that symbol meant, even if it meant changing the locks first. I didn't drive home. I drove to the only place where my brain could stop spinning long enough to form actual sentences. My best friend Maya's apartment above a bakery that always smelled like cinnamon and burnt espresso. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and didn't ask, "How did it go?" She just said, "Come in." I dropped my purse on the floor, sat on her couch, and that's when I noticed my hands were still shaking like I'd been standing outside in the cold for hours. Maya handed me a mug of tea and sat across from me like she was bracing for impact. "Say it slow," she said. I let out a laugh that wasn't funny. "I inherited $1, I said. Maya blinked. "Rachel. $1, I repeated. Evan got the house. He got the accounts. He got everything. Maya's jaw tightened. "That's not an accident," she said. "No," I whispered. "It's a message." I told her the exact wording. Fully satisfied. Like I was a nuisance line item. Like my entire existence could be balanced with a coin. Maya stared into her tea like she was trying not to throw it across the room. "Did he know?" she asked. I didn't even have to think. "Yes," I said. "He knew." He was calm like he was picking up dry cleaning. Maya leaned forward. "Okay," she said. "Listen to me. You do not talk to your family right now. You don't explain. You don't defend. You collect. Paper. Screenshots. Dates. You hear me?" I nodded, because it felt like someone had finally spoken to me, like I was allowed to protect myself. My whole life, protecting myself had been treated like betrayal. Then my brain started doing what it always did. rewinding the past and trying to find the moment where I missed the warning sign. And the truth was, the signs weren't subtle. They were just normal to me. Normal was watching Evan get help and watching me get pride. Normal was Mom saying, "You're so independent, Rachel." Like independence was a gift, not a job she assigned me so she didn't have to show up. Normal was being praised for swallowing things that should have been unforgivable. I remembered being 16, standing in the driveway while Mom handed Evan car keys with a bright red bow. "So he can be safe," she said. He got a car. I got a lecture about how money doesn't grow on trees. I remembered being 21, working a double shift at a restaurant because my rent was due, while Evan moved back into the house after needing a reset. Mom cooked his favorite meals, sat with him, told him he wasn't a failure. When I cried from exhaustion, she said, "Don't be dramatic. You're strong." Strong. That word followed me like a leash. Strong meant I didn't get to need anything. Strong meant I didn't get to be rescued. I told Maya about the time Mom got sick and I started driving her to appointments every weekend. Evan went once, complained about parking, and never came again because hospitals make me anxious. Mom accepted that. She accepted his anxiety like it was sacred. My fatigue was just expected. Maya listened and her face got harder with every story. "So she trained you," she said quietly. "Trained me?" I repeated. "Yeah," she said. "She trained you to accept less so she could give him more without feeling guilty." The sentence landed and my throat tightened. 'Cause it was true. And because it meant my mother didn't just fail me once. She built a system around failing me and called it family love. I pulled my phone out and showed Maya Evan's text. "Don't tell the family. Let Mom rest," Maya snorted. "He's not protecting Mom," she said. "He's protecting the story." She was right. Evan didn't want grief. He wanted control. He wanted everyone to see him as the devoted son handling everything with dignity, while I was supposed to be the quiet background character who didn't disrupt the picture. Maya slid her laptop toward me. "First," she said, "you get the probate file number. You request a copy of everything. You get the house valuation. You get the account records. And you find out if anything changed hands before she died." I stared at her. "Changed hands? People do gifts and transfers before death all the time," she said. "Especially when they want the will to look clean." My stomach turned. Because suddenly I remembered something Mom said months ago over coffee, like it was nothing. "Evan's helping me get my affairs in order." At the time I'd smiled and said, "Good," 'cause I was trying to be easy. The good daughter. The daughter who doesn't make things complicated. Now that sentence sounded like a confession. I opened my notes app and started typing a timeline. Date of the notary appointment. Exact phrases. Evan's reactions. His text. Every little detail that felt pointless before but suddenly felt like evidence. Maya watched me. "You're going to need a lawyer," she said. "I don't want a war," I murmured. "Rachel," Maya said, calm and firm, "you didn't start this. They started it when they handed you $1 and called it closure." I swallowed. What if I'm just being greedy? The words tasted like shame. Like my mother's voice had crawled into my mouth and spoken for me. Maya's eyes softened. "You're not greedy," she said. "You're finally asking for what was withheld." My phone vibrated again. Another message from Evan. "Don't be petty. The house is complicated. Just let it go. Don't be petty." That was his favorite word for anything I did that threatened his comfort. Petty meant, "Stop making me explain myself." I screenshot it. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. It felt like slamming a door in a house that had always been open for everyone else except me. I went home later that night, but my apartment didn't feel like home. It felt like a waiting room. I sat at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and did what I should have done years ago. I stopped hoping they'd suddenly become fair, and I started preparing for the version of them that never would. I requested the probate paperwork. I pulled property records. I searched for refinancing documents and liens. I made a folder on my desktop labeled evidence because if I didn't name it that, I would have kept telling myself it was too much. But it wasn't too much. It was overdue, and just as I was saving the first batch of documents, my phone rang. Not a text. Call. Evan. I stared at it until it stopped. Then it rang again. And again. Like he couldn't stand that I wasn't responding on command, finally a voicemail appeared. I hit play. His voice was low and controlled, like he was performing calm. Rachel, stop. You're going to embarrass yourself. Mom made her choice. Don't drag the family through this. Pause. Then his tone shifted, just a little sharper. And don't forget, you don't have a key anymore. I froze. You don't have a key anymore. He'd taken it. Or he was reminding me he had taken it. And suddenly I saw the chessboard. The will wasn't the first move. It was the last move. The final stamp. Evan had been controlling access for months. I stared at my screen, at my folder, at the word evidence. And I felt that quiet anger harden into something else. Resolve, because if he thought taking my key meant taking my place in that house, my childhood, my history, my right to ask questions, then he was about to learn something I'd never let myself learn before. I wasn't asking for permission anymore, and the first thing I was going to do was step back onto that property on my terms. Not to beg, not to cry, not to plead for a crumb of fairness, but to make sure the next lock that clicked shut wasn't mine. The next morning I called an estate attorney. Her name was Denise Porter, and she sounded like the kind of woman who didn't let people waste her time with family excuses. I told her the facts, the $1, the fully satisfied line, the $420,000 house, and my brother's sudden confidence. Denise didn't gasp or offer sympathy. She just said, "That's deliberate." My throat tightened. Deliberate means? It means they didn't forget you, she said. They wanted to document that you were intentionally excluded. She explained what could be challenged and what couldn't. Courts don't fix unfairness. They fix the legal process. Influence. Capacity. Fraud. Undisclosed transfers. She said I needed documents, timelines, and proof of pressure. Did your mom make any transfers in the last 2 years? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But Evan was helping her with paperwork toward the end. Denise made a small sound, like she'd heard that sentence 1,000 times. Then we start there, she said. We request the probate file. We request an accounting. And we pull the property record. If there was a lien, refinance, or deed change, we'll see it. When I hung up, I felt weirdly steady. Not happy. Not relieved. Just oriented. Like someone finally handed me a map after years of wandering in fog. That steadiness lasted exactly 3 hours because at noon my aunt called. Then my uncle. Then my cousin I barely talked to. It was like Evan hit a button and my entire family system woke up to shove me back into the place they liked best. Quiet, grateful, invisible. I didn't answer any calls. I let them go to voicemail and saved them. I listened to the first one. My aunt's voice was syrupy and sharp at the same time. Rachel, sweetheart, don't do this. Your mom is gone. Don't turn her death into a spectacle. Evan is grieving. Grieving. Evan. Always Evan. I listened to the second one. My uncle, heavier tone. You're acting entitled. Your mother had reasons. We don't need lawsuits in this family. Entitled. Another word that used to make my needs sound like greed. Then a text came through from my cousin. I heard you're trying to take the house. Please stop. You're hurting everyone. I stared at that message for a full minute because it was so perfectly backwards it almost impressed me. Evan got the house. I got $1. And somehow I was the one taking. That's when I realized what Evan had really inherited wasn't just property. It was narrative control. The ability to tell the story first and frame me as the villain before I even spoke. I opened my notes app and started a new list. Family pressure. Date. Time. Who called. What they said. I wasn't doing it to be petty. I was doing it because Denise had said one thing that stuck with me. Patterns matter. After that, I did what I hadn't done in years. I drove to Cedar Ridge Lane. I told myself it was just to look. Just to breathe. just to stand on the sidewalk and remind my brain that this was real. But my hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. My stomach was tight the closer I got, like my body remembered every childhood moment of being told I was too much. The house looked the same from the outside. White siding, green shutters, the porch swing Mom never used but insisted looked charming. The same tree out front where Evan carved his initials, and I got blamed for encouraging him because I didn't stop him fast enough that I parked across the street and just sat there for a moment. Curtains drawn. Quiet. Like the house was holding its breath. Then the front door opened. Evan stepped out carrying a box. Not a small one. A big one. The kind you use when you're clearing out someone's life. He set it down on the porch and lit a cigarette. Evan didn't even smoke, not really. He just did it when he wanted to look stressed and noble. The devoted son burdened by responsibility. Then he looked up and saw my car, and I watched his face change in real time. Surprise. Annoyance. Then that smooth, controlled expression like he was about to perform. "Rachel!" he called out like I was an unwanted guest at my own childhood home. I got out of the car and walked toward the porch. My legs felt heavy, but my spine felt straight. "You're not supposed to be here," he said as I stopped at the bottom step. "I can be on a public sidewalk," I replied calmly. He smirked. "Cute." Then he glanced at my hands. "Where's your key?" I stared at him. "You took it." He shrugged like it was nothing. "I collected all the keys. It's for security. I'm changing the locks anyway." Changing the locks anyway. The words hit like a slap. He was already rewriting the physical reality. My access, my memories, my right to step inside. Not because I was dangerous. Because I was inconvenient. "What are you doing with those boxes?" I asked, nodding to the porch. His smile widened slightly. "Sorting. Donating. Getting rid of junk. Junk. Like my mother's belongings were trash he had to heroically manage. Like my childhood objects, photos, letters, maybe even things Mom kept from me were his to label and toss." "I want to see what you're throwing out," I said. Evan's eyes narrowed. "No, just no. No explanation. No kindness. No pretense. The answer of someone who knows he holds power." "Rachel," he said, stepping closer, voice lowering, "don't start. Mom is gone. You got what you got. You don't get to show up now and pretend you care." The audacity of it made my hands go cold. I cared for years. I cared when he didn't. I cared when Mom called me late at night to complain about him. Cared when she was sick. I cared until caring felt like a second job with no pay and no appreciation. "I'm not pretending," I said quietly. "I'm done being erased." He laughed sharp. "Erased? Drama queen." Then he leaned in like he was telling me a secret. "You know why she did it, right? 'Cause you always wanted more. You always made things tense." She was tired. My chest tightened. He was using Mom's death like a weapon. The ultimate trump card. She's not here to deny it, so he can claim anything. "I'm not arguing with you on the porch," I said. "My attorney will request an accounting." The moment I said, "attorney," Evan's expression flickered. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was irritation, the kind people feel when you stop playing by the unwritten rules. "Oh, so that's what this is," he sneered. "A lawsuit. Great. You really are going to make her death about you." I took a slow breath. "No," I said. "You made her death about you when you started moving boxes before I even saw what she left behind." He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, an older woman stepped out from the side yard, Mrs. Hargrove, our neighbor. She'd lived next door since before I was born. She carried a small watering can and looked between us like she could smell the tension. "Everything okay?" she asked. Evan's voice softened instantly. "Performance mode." "Yes, Mrs. Hargrove," he said. "Just family stuff." Family stuff. The phrase that hides everything ugly behind a polite curtain. Mrs. Hargrove turned to me. "Rachel, honey," she said gently. "I'm so sorry about your mom." I nodded. "Thank you." Her eyes shifted back to Evan. "Your mom and Evan were at the bank last spring," she said casually, like she was talking about the weather. "I remember because your mom was upset and said she needed to get everything settled before Rachel turns it into a debate." Evan went still. The cigarette in his hand hovered like it forgot how to move. My pulse kicked. That sentence was gasoline. It wasn't proof in court yet, but it was a crack in Evan's polished story. A confirmation that something happened last spring. Something official. Something planned. Evan forced a laugh. "Mrs. Hargrove, you must have misunderstood." Mrs. Hargrove frowned. "No, dear. I don't misunderstand much." Then she walked back toward her yard like she'd just dropped a bomb and didn't care about the smoke. I turned back to Evan. His eyes were darker now. "Less performer, more predator. Get in your car and go," he said quietly. "Or what?" I asked, and my voice surprised me with its calm. "Or you'll regret it," he said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just cold promise. I stared at him. Then I did something that felt like breaking a generational curse. I didn't apologize. I didn't soothe. I didn't retreat. "I already regret staying quiet for years," I said. "That's not happening again." I walked back to my car with my heart pounding. Evan watched me like he wanted to follow, like he wanted to control the ending of the scene. But he didn't, because there was a neighbor. There were eyes. There was daylight, and as I drove away, one thought kept repeating in my head. If Evan is already changing the locks, it means he's afraid of something. Not me. Not my grief. Something in the house. Something in the paperwork. Something he doesn't want me to see, and I wasn't going to wait until it disappeared. That night I didn't sleep. I kept seeing Evan on the porch with that box like he was taking inventory of my mother's life and deciding what parts of me were allowed to exist. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Mrs. Hargrove's sentence again, "Before Rachel turns it into a debate." Like my questions were a disease. Like the truth was something to prevent, and the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. The will wasn't the first move. It was the final stamp. Something big happened last spring, something official enough for a bank visit, and emotional enough for Mom to complain about me by name. I got up at 5:11 a.m., made coffee I didn't drink, and opened my laptop. I pulled every public record I could find: property history, tax assessment, any refinancing notice, any lien. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew it existed, and then I found a recorded document filed 8 months ago, a deed-related change. Not a full transfer, but a new encumbrance, an instrument that didn't belong there unless someone signed something. My stomach dropped. Because this wasn't just Evan inherited the house. This was Evan was positioning himself before Mom died. I stared at the PDF like it might move. Then I did what Maya told me to do. I documented. I saved it in my evidence folder. I printed it. I highlighted the date. I wrote down the recording number, the county office, everything. Then my phone buzzed. A group text I hadn't been in for years. Carter Family Updates. The kind of group where everyone posts holiday photos and passive-aggressive prayer hands when someone dares to have boundaries. "Aunt Susan, we heard you went to the house." "Rachel, please stop." "Uncle Dean, your mother would be devastated by this behavior." "Cousin Paige, Evan is doing his best. Don't make it harder." There it was again. Chorus. The script. Evan is doing his best. Rachel is the problem. I didn't respond. I screenshot every message and dropped them into a folder labeled pressure. Then I changed my settings so the group could scream into the void without touching my nervous system, and that's when Evan called. Not once. 3 times. Like he was trying to force me back into being accessible. I let it go to voicemail. His message came through with a calm voice that sounded practiced. "Rachel, I'm going to be nice one last time. I'm changing the locks today. You don't need access. The house is mine. The sooner you accept it, the sooner we can heal." Heal. Like healing meant silence. Like healing meant pretending a $1 slap was closure. I listened again, and on the second playthrough I noticed something. He said today. He wasn't just changing the locks eventually. He was doing it now. Fast. Like he needed my key useless. Like he needed time. I called Maya. She answered on the first ring. He's changing the locks today, I said. Then he's hiding something, she replied instantly. You need eyes on that house before he finishes cleaning it out. I can't break in, I said. You don't have to, she said. You just need a legal reason to be present. A legal reason. My chest tightened. I'm not on the deed, I reminded her, but probate isn't finished, she said. He doesn't own it free and clear yet. Not truly. He's acting like he does, but that doesn't mean you have no rights. Call your attorney. Now. So I did. Denise picked up, and when I explained Evan was changing locks and removing items, her tone sharpened. That's a problem, she said. He's not supposed to dispose of estate property before an inventory is completed. He's calling it junk, I said. It doesn't matter what he calls it, Denise replied. If you suspect he's removing documents or valuables, we can send a formal notice demanding preservation. Today. Preservation. The word hit like oxygen. Someone else was taking this seriously. Denise drafted a letter while I was on the phone. A cease and preserve notice. No disposal. No donation. No sale. Full inventory required. She told me to email it to Evan and to the probate attorney, and then she added something that made my spine go cold. Also, Rachel, do you have any reason to believe your mother's will was created under pressure? I thought of Evan's calm. His confidence. His mom wanted clarity. I thought of the bank visit. The recorded document. Mrs. Hargrove's memory. And I thought about Mom's last year. How foggy she got sometimes, how she'd repeat herself, how she'd suddenly ask me the same question twice in one call and then snap at me for acting concerned. I don't know, I admitted. But I know Evan was controlling the process. Denise paused. Then we treat this like a potential influence case, she said. Not emotional. Procedural. Evidence-based. Procedural. Evidence. To my kind of language now, after I sent the preservation notice, my phone immediately lit up with Evan's reply. You're insane. It's my house. Stop harassing me. Harassing. The word people use when they don't want you to ask questions. I didn't respond. I screenshot it. I added it to evidence. 'Cause I was done arguing. I was building a file and then something happened that made my stomach flip in a completely different way. I got an email from an old account I hadn't checked in months. My mom's shared family email she used when she forgot passwords. Years ago, when she was sick and overwhelmed, she'd asked me to set it up. I still had access because she never changed anything. Evan probably didn't even know it existed. I logged in, not because I was spying, but because my instincts screamed that the truth lived somewhere Evan didn't control, and the inbox was full of boring junk. Store coupons, appointment reminders, newsletters she never read. But then I saw a thread with a subject line that punched the air out of my chest. Draft, transfer documents. From 8 months ago. The sender was a local bank rep. The recipients were Mom and Evan. Evan was CC'd. PDF was attached. My hands went cold. I hovered over the attachment, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This was it. This was the last spring moment. The thing they tried to finish before I debated it. I clicked. The document opened slowly, and the first page was full of legal language. Then I saw the line that made my vision blur. Transfer of interest, beneficiary, Evan Carter. Not after death. Not through the will. Before. Prepared. Structured. Like a plan. My throat tightened, and a single humiliating thought flashed through my mind. She didn't just choose him at the end. She chose him before the end. She made sure it was locked in while she was still alive. I scrolled further, and there it was again, the sentence that felt like it was written directly to hurt me. Rachel Carter to receive nominal consideration. Nominal consideration. That was the legal way of saying $1. The $1 wasn't just the will. It was a strategy. A statement. An eraser, but now I had something Evan didn't expect me to have: paper, dates, emails, a draft with his name on it. Proof that the story was bigger than grief and smaller than love. It was logistics. It was control, and in that moment, sitting alone at my kitchen table with a mug of cold coffee, I understood why Evan was changing the lock so fast. He wasn't protecting the house, he was protecting the evidence, and I wasn't going to let him sweep my name out of the file the way he swept me out of the will. The next morning, Denise called me before I even finished brushing my teeth. "Rachel," she said, voice clipped, "forward me that email thread. The entire chain. With headers. Timestamps. Everything." I sent it while my toothpaste still burned minty on my tongue. I attached the PDF. I attached screenshots of the CC line with Evan's name. I attached the preservation notice and his reply calling me insane. Denise responded almost immediately. "This is significant." Significant didn't mean I suddenly got the house. It meant Evan's story, Mom's final wish, the neat little narrative of a simple will, had cracks. It meant there had been planning. It meant the $1 wasn't a last-minute decision. It was part of a structure. She called again. "There are 2 tracks here," she explained. Probate administration and potential undue influence. Right now, our priority is preservation and disclosure. We want to stop him from disposing of anything and force production of documents. "He's already packing boxes," I said. "He told me he was donating junk." "Then we move fast," Denise said. "I'm filing a request for a temporary restraining order related to estate property. And I'm sending formal demands to the bank and the attorney who drafted these documents." I sank onto my couch. My stomach churned with a weird mix of panic and relief. Panic because this was real, bigger than a sibling fight. Relief because someone in power finally agreed this wasn't Rachel being dramatic. Still didn't stop the family from trying to crush me back into silence. By noon, my cousin Paige posted something on Facebook. It wasn't naming me, but it might as well have. A photo of my mom with angel wings edited behind her, and a caption about selfish people who fight over money while others mourn. Dozens of comments. Prayer hands. So sad. Some people have no shame. I stared at the screen and felt my throat tighten. Evan was building his public case. I'm greedy. He's grieving. Mom is a saint. The house is sacred. Rachel is the villain. I didn't comment. I saved the screenshot. I sent it to Denise. She replied with 2 words, "Keep everything." Then my Aunt Susan showed up at my door. I knew it was her before I even opened it because she knocked the way she always did, quick, authoritative, like she owned whatever space she stood in. When I opened the door, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She wore a black coat and the expression of a woman who believed family hierarchy was more important than law. "Rachel," she said, voice low like she was trying to sound compassionate. "What are you doing?" I shut the door calmly. "I'm requesting an accounting," I said. "And I'm asking Evan to preserve estate property." She stared at me like I'd admitted to committing a crime. "You're tearing the family apart," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm refusing to be erased quietly." Her lips tightened. "Your mother gave you $1 for a reason." There it was. The sentence that always made me feel like I deserved the pain. Like there was some secret list of offenses I'd committed without knowing. Like if Mom rejected me, it must have been earned, and what reason is that? I asked softly. Susan's eyes flicked away. That tiny movement told me everything. She didn't have a reason. She had loyalty. "Rachel," she said, switching tactics, "your mom was fragile near the end. Tress was dangerous for her. Evan protected her. You always argued. Argued. That's what they called me, asking for clarity. Asking for fairness. Asking why Evan got everything again." I swallowed the anger and kept my voice even. "I didn't argue," I said. "I asked questions. Evan made sure I didn't get answers." Susan stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was giving me a warning. "If you keep pushing this, people will talk. They'll say things about you. Things your mother said. Do you want that? My skin went cold. That was the threat. The unspoken family weapon, reputation. They would smear me with whispers and call it truth. If my mother said things about me that justify a $1 erasure, I said, then I want them in writing. Susan's face hardened. You're heartless. I let out a short, humorless laugh. No, I said. I'm finally practical. Susan's eyes narrowed. Evan says you're doing this because you're jealous, she snapped. Because you always hated him. Jealous. Hated. I stared at her, and the absurdity almost made me dizzy. I was the one who took care of Mom. I was the one who covered bills. I was the one who tried. But the family story needed a villain, and I was the easiest candidate because I didn't fit the role of obedient daughter anymore. I don't hate Evan, I said quietly. I hate what he's doing. Susan scoffed. He's doing what your mother wanted. Then it can withstand transparency, I said, and my voice didn't shake. If everything is clean and inventory and document production won't hurt anyone. Susan stared at me for a long moment like she was trying to decide whether intimidation would work. Then she snapped, Your mother would be ashamed of you. And that sentence hit the part of me that was still soft. The part that wanted to be loved. The part that still imagined a different ending. My eyes stung for a second and I blinked once. Then I said the thing I never thought I'd be brave enough to say out loud. She was ashamed of me when I was alive, too. That's why we're here. Susan's face flickered, surprise, then anger. Fine, she said sharply. If you want to be alone, you will be. She walked out, leaving the air behind her heavy. I locked the door with shaking hands and leaned against it, breathing hard. The old me would have chased her down the hallway, apologized, begged for peace. The new me opened my laptop and continued building my case. That afternoon, Denise emailed, Court hearing scheduled regarding preservation order. Evan has been served. My stomach flipped. Served. That meant official. That meant Evan couldn't just bully me with texts and family whispers anymore. He had to answer to a judge, and right then my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A message appeared seconds later. Rachel, it's Evan. Answer. He was calling from someone else's phone to bypass being blocked. That was Evan, always finding a back door when the front door was closed and I didn't answer. I saved the voicemail. His voice was low, furious, tight. You think you're smart? You think you can take my house? I will destroy you. I will tell everyone what Mom really thought about you. Destroy you. I replayed it twice to make sure I heard right. Then I forwarded it to Denise with the subject line, Threat. She replied, Good. Keep that. Good. Keep that. For once, his intimidation wasn't working. It was evidence. That night I sat at my kitchen table and printed everything. Emails. Records. Threats. The draft transfer document. The group texts. Facebook post. I made tabs and labels like I was building a case file for someone else's life because in a way I was building a file for the version of me the family tried to erase. The version of me that existed in facts, not feelings, and as I slid the papers into a binder, I realized something that made my stomach go still. The locks on Cedar Ridge Lane weren't the only thing Evan was trying to change. He was trying to lock me out of the story itself, but I had the paperwork now. And paperwork doesn't care who the golden child is. The hearing was set for Friday morning. 3 days. That's how long I had to sit with my own nerves, listening to my phone buzz with messages I refused to open and imagining Evan walking through my mother's house deciding what parts of my life were junk. I kept my routine because if I didn't, I'd spiral. Work. Coffee. Emails. Pretending to be a normal 29-year-old graphic designer while my family tried to legally and emotionally erase me. My coworkers didn't know why I kept rubbing my temples or why I flinched every time my phone lit up, but Maya did. She texted me twice a day like a clock. Breathe. Screenshot. Thursday night, I got a notification from the county recorder's website. A new filing. Not brand new, but newly indexed. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw the address. 118 Cedar Ridge Lane. I clicked it and scanned the details with shaking hands. It was a change of contact information for the property tax mailing address, updated to Evan's apartment. Evan was trying to reroute everything to himself. Mail. Bills. Notices. Anything official. Anything that could land in my hands by accident. I forwarded it to Denise. She replied, "He's consolidating control." Helpful for our argument. Helpful. Another word I never expected to hear associated with Evan's behavior. But it made sense. When someone scrambles this hard, it signals fear. Innocent people don't sprint to hide paper, they just let the paper exist. Till 11:47 p.m., there was a knock on my door. Not a polite knock. A heavy, impatient one. My chest seized. I froze in my kitchen, holding a fork like it could protect me. The knock came again, harder. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I crept to the peephole, and there he was, Evan. Alone. Standing too close to my door, like he wanted it to feel like a boundary he could break. His hair was still damp, like he'd rushed. His jaw was tight. His eyes were wrong, too focused, too certain of his right to be there. My whole body went hot, then cold. I knew instantly why he came now. The hearing was tomorrow. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to pressure me before a judge could. I didn't open the door. I didn't speak. I pulled out my phone and hit record, aiming it at the door to capture sound. "Rachel," Evan said through the wood, voice low and controlled. "Open up." Silence from me. "I'm not leaving until you do," he added, like he still thought he could wear me down with persistence. Like I was still 14 and he was still allowed to demand space in my life. I stayed quiet. My hands were shaking so hard my phone blurred. Then he changed tone. "Look," he said, softer. "This is getting out of hand. We can fix it. We can make a deal." A deal. My stomach turned. "The family doesn't offer deals unless they're losing control." "You're humiliating yourself," he said, and the softness vanished. "And you're humiliating Mom. Do you want people thinking she was manipulated? Do you want them digging into her mental state? Is that what you want on her name?" There it was. The guilt hook. He was trying to make me protect the woman who just left me $1. He was trying to force me back into being her shield. "Open the door," he said again, sharper now. "Stop acting like a victim." Victim. Another word used to make my pain look like performance. I finally spoke, loud enough to be clear but calm enough to be unshakable. "Anything you have to say can go through my attorney." There was a pause. Then a short, bitter laugh. "Your attorney," he repeated like it was a joke. "Rachel, you don't even know what you're doing. You're letting strangers fill your head with garbage." Garbage. Like my need for fairness was trash. Like the law was trash when it didn't serve him. "You got $1 because you were always..." He stopped, as if he caught himself. Then he finished the sentence anyway, like poison he couldn't swallow. "Because you were always difficult." Difficult. The family word for won't be controlled. I swallowed hard. Not because it hurt, because I recognized it as his script. He wanted me to react. To cry. To prove him right by losing control. I didn't. I just said leave. He exhaled sharply through his nose. "If you don't stop this," he said, and his voice dropped lower, more dangerous, "I will tell everyone why Mom didn't want you. I will show them the messages. I will show them the things you said." My skin went cold. He was threatening to rewrite history publicly. To take private moments and frame them as evidence that I deserved abandonment. "Do it," I heard myself say before I could overthink it. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. "If you have proof I deserved $1, put it in writing." Silence on the other side of the door. Just a breath. Then I heard him shift, like he didn't expect that response. "You think you're brave?" He hissed. "You're not brave. You're petty." Then something hit my door. Not hard enough to break it. Hard enough to make my whole body jerk. A fist. A palm. A shove. A physical punctuation mark meant to remind me that he could get louder if he wanted. I didn't scream. I didn't open the door. I kept recording. My hands shook, but I held the phone steady enough to capture the sound. Thump, thump, the scrape of his knuckles against wood. "This is your last warning," he said. "Drop it." And then, like a switch, his voice softened again. "Rachel," he said, almost pleading, "please, just stop. We can talk. Mom wanted peace. Mom wanted peace." The line he used like holy water, like a blessing, like a muzzle. My throat tightened, but I stayed calm. "Go away, Evan," I said. "You're being recorded." There was a pause so long I could hear my own breathing. Then I heard him swallow. The air shifted. He realized he was losing control of the narrative because now there was proof of his pressure. "Not just my word against his. You're insane," he said, quieter, and for the first time there was something like panic under the anger. "You're actually insane." Then footsteps. Fast. Down the hallway. The building door slammed. I sank to the floor with my back against the wall, phone still recording, and I realized my entire body was trembling. Not because I doubted myself. 'Cause I finally saw Evan without the family filter. Not as the sensitive brother. Not as the grieving son. As a man who believed he was entitled to silence me. The next morning I emailed the audio file to Denise. Subject line: "Evan at my door, threats." She responded, "Excellent. Bring it to court." Excellent. The word almost made me laugh. Because in my family, evidence like that would have been dismissed. "He's stressed. He didn't mean it. You provoked him." But in court, threats aren't stress. Their behavior. Friday morning I walked into the courthouse in a plain blazer, hair pulled back, binder under my arm like armor. Maya came with me. She didn't say much. She just stayed beside me like a wall. Denise met us near the courtroom doors. She looked at me, looked at the binder, and nodded once. "Good," she said. "Today we don't argue. We present." Inside, Evan sat with his own attorney. He looked calm again, suit pressed, grief mask back on. He didn't look at me like a sister. He looked at me like a threat. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought about the $1. About the locks. About the boxes. About Evan's fist hitting my door. I sat down and opened my binder, and for the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never felt in my own family system. I felt protected by a structure that didn't care who was the favorite child. A structure that only cared about facts, and I had plenty. The judge was a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled into a low bun and eyes that looked like they'd seen every version of family drama people tried to disguise as grief. She didn't smile. She didn't soften her tone. She just said, "We're here for preservation of estate property and disclosure." And that sentence alone felt like a miracle, because it meant the room wasn't here to debate whether my pain was valid. It was here to deal with what Evan was doing. Denise stood and spoke first. She didn't say, "Rachel is devastated." She didn't say, "This is unfair." She said, "The personal representative is removing and disposing of estate property before completing an inventory. He has changed locks, threatened the beneficiary, and there is evidence of pre-death transfer planning." She handed over a packet. My packet. My binder turned into paper on the judge's desk. Evan's attorney stood next. A man with a polished voice who sounded like he'd been trained to make bad behavior look reasonable. "Your Honor, my client is simply securing the property," he said. "He is grieving. He is handling the burden of administration. Ms. Carter has created conflict. Created conflict. Like conflict wasn't built into a $1 erasure." Denise didn't flinch. "We're not litigating emotions," she said. "We're requesting a standard preservation order and immediate inventory. Additionally, we have documentation suggesting a draft transfer instrument was prepared 8 months prior, with Mr. Carter CC'd, and language indicating nominal consideration to Ms. Carter. The judge's gaze lifted. "Nominal consideration?" she asked. Denise nodded. $1. A tiny shift happened in the judge's expression. Not sympathy. Recognition. Like she'd seen that tactic before. Like she understood what that dollar really was. Not a gift. A statement that Evan's attorney tried to move fast. "That language is not unusual. It is unusual," the judge cut in calmly, "if it is being used alongside actions that suggest concealment." Then she looked at Evan directly. "Mr. Carter, have you donated or discarded any of your mother's belongings?" Evan's jaw tightened. His grief mask flickered. "No," he said. "Not discarded. Just organized. I'm sorting." "Sorting is fine," the judge replied. "Disposition is not. Has an inventory been completed?" Evan hesitated half a beat too long. "Not yet," he admitted. "And you changed the locks?" The judge asked. Evan's attorney jumped in. "For security, Your Honor." The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Carter," she repeated. Evan swallowed. "Yes," he said. "I changed them. There have been tensions. Tensions. Like my existence was a threat." The judge glanced at Denise. "You mentioned threats," she said. Denise stood again. "We have an audio recording of Mr. Carter arriving at Ms. Carter's residence the night before this hearing, demanding she drop it, threatening to destroy her reputation by exposing private messages and striking her door." My stomach tightened as the words left Denise's mouth. Even though they were true, hearing them said out loud in a courtroom made them feel heavier. Realer. Permanent. Evan's head snapped toward me for the first time. His eyes were sharp, furious, like he couldn't believe I let anyone hear what he'd done. Like the biggest crime wasn't his behavior. It was my refusal to hide it. Denise offered the file to the judge. The judge listened through a courtroom speaker, face unreadable. I sat very still, hands folded, staring at the wood grain on the table like it could keep me calm. Evan's voice filled the room. "This is your last warning. Drop it." Then the thump against my door. Then his line about telling everyone why Mom didn't want you. When the audio ended, the silence was thick. Not the silence of my family, where silence meant "don't make it worse." This silence meant consequences. The judge's voice was quiet when she spoke. "Mr. Carter," she said, "do you understand how inappropriate this conduct is in the context of a state administration?" Evan's attorney started to speak. "Your Honor, he was under stress." The judge held up her hand again. "Stress does not justify intimidation," she said calmly. "And it certainly does not justify attempting to influence or silence another beneficiary." Beneficiary. That word hit me. In my family, I was the problem. Here, I was a beneficiary. A person recognized by the system. Evan looked pale now. Confident posture started to crack. Denise continued. "We are requesting an immediate order that Mr. Carter cease any removal, donation, sale, or destruction of estate property, that a full inventory be completed within 10 days, that all financial records be disclosed, and that all communication go through counsel. Additionally, given the pre-death draft transfer document, we request subpoenas to the bank and any drafting attorney for related correspondence." The judge nodded slowly, flipping through the papers. Then she looked at Evan. "I'm granting the preservation order," she said. 10 days for inventory. No disposition. All items remain on the property. Any violation may be treated as contempt." Evan's face tightened. His attorney leaned toward him, whispering. Evan's eyes darted like he was recalculating. The judge continued. "Furthermore, Mr. Carter, you are not to contact Ms. Carter directly. All communication goes through counsel. If you appear at her residence again, she may seek additional protective relief." Protective relief. Another miracle phrase. It meant my boundary wasn't dramatic. It was enforceable. Evan's attorney tried one last push. "Your Honor, my client is the rightful heir of the property." The judge's eyes didn't blink. Your client is the nominated personal representative, she said. That is a position of duty, not entitlement. If he treats it as entitlement, that position can be reconsidered. Reconsidered. I felt Maya's hand brush my elbow under the table, a tiny silent celebration that Evan's grief mask was gone now. What was left was a man who realized his favorite weapon, family pressure, didn't work in this room. In this room there were rules, and then the judge said something that sliced through years of manipulation like a clean line. This matter is not about who deserves what emotionally. It is about whether the estate is being properly administered. Not who deserves what emotionally. I almost laughed at how deeply I needed to hear that, and how pathetic it was that I'd never heard it from my own family. We walked out of the courtroom 10 minutes later with paperwork in Denise's hands and fresh air in my lungs. Evan passed me in the hallway, shoulders stiff. He leaned close enough that only I could hear and hissed, "You think you won?" I turned my head slightly and met his eyes. My voice stayed low, calm. "I think you're scared," I said. "And that tells me everything." His nostrils flared. For a second he looked like he wanted to say something nastier, something that would cut. But there were people. Cameras. Witnesses. And now there were consequences, so he walked away and I stood there, binder hugged to my chest, realizing the locks Evan changed weren't the only locks that mattered. The lock on my silence had finally snapped. The first thing I did after court wasn't celebrate. It wasn't even cry. I sat in my car, hands on the steering wheel, and stared straight ahead like I was waiting for my body to catch up with what just happened. Because for the first time in my life, someone with authority heard the truth about my family and didn't tell me to be the bigger person. They told Evan to stop. Even that felt unreal. Maya leaned into the passenger window. "You okay?" she asked softly. I blinked and finally let out a breath. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I feel lighter." Denise had told me the next steps. 10 days. Inventory. No donations. No junk runs. Subpoena requests to the bank and the attorney involved in those draft transfer documents. Evan couldn't just bulldoze his way through this anymore. He had to follow rules, and rules were something Evan had never respected unless he could benefit from them. For the next week, my phone was quiet in a way it had never been before. Not because the family suddenly understood boundaries. Because Denise sent one email to Evan's attorney with the court order attached and the words, "All contact through counsel." Carter family machine didn't know what to do when it couldn't reach me directly. So it did what it always did. It turned to gossip. I heard it through the only person in the family who still talked to me without venom, my cousin Jenna. She texted me from a burner number because she didn't want Evan knowing she contacted me. "They're saying you recorded him to set him up. They're saying you're cold. They're saying you don't care Mom died." I stared at that message for a long time and felt something surprising. Nothing. Not the old panic. Not the urge to defend. Just clarity, because if caring meant staying silent while my brother erased me, then I was fine being called cold. Denise called me on day 4. "Inventory inspection is scheduled," she said. "You will be present, and so will a neutral third party. Do not go alone." Of course, Evan tried to sabotage even that. The night before the inspection, I got a notification from my mom's old email again. Someone had attempted a password reset. I stared at the screen, the timestamp, and felt my blood go cold. Evan. He'd realized the inbox existed. He was trying to shut the door after I'd already walked through it. I immediately forwarded the alert to Denise. She replied, "Good catch. Do not change anything yet. Document. We'll secure it through formal process." It was surreal, watching Evan scramble to close holes he didn't know existed. Like he'd been living in a house full of secret doors and suddenly realized I had a map. On inspection day, I pulled up to Cedar Ridge Lane with Denise's representative and an inventory clerk. Not friends. Not family. Professionals. Witnesses. Evan opened the door. New locks. Shiny brass. A physical statement, "Mine now." He wore a tight smile and held himself like a man trying not to explode. "Rachel, he said, as if saying my name tasted bitter. Evan, I replied, evenly. I stepped inside my childhood home and the air punched me with memories. Cleaning product, old wood, the faint hint of Mom's perfume that didn't belong there anymore. For a second my throat tightened. Not because I missed the house. Because I missed the idea of a mother who would have wanted me there. Then I looked around and saw how much had already changed. Empty shelves. Missing frames. Corner table in the hallway, bare where Mom kept a ceramic bowl full of keys and little notes. The living room looked staged, like he'd already been curating what the world would see. The inventory clerk started calmly, methodically, listing visible items, photographing, labeling. Evan's jaw clenched tighter with every click of the camera. 'Cause each photo was the opposite of control. Each label was a boundary he didn't get to override. I walked through room by room, not touching anything, just observing. In my mother's bedroom, the top drawer of her dresser was half empty. In the closet, boxes were stacked like someone had already sorted keep and trash. In the office, my mother's little desk space, there was a clean rectangle on the surface where a file box used to sit. I remembered that box. I remembered because I'd asked about it once and Mom snapped, "It's just paperwork." Now it was gone. I turned to Evan, keeping my voice calm. "Where are the documents?" I asked. He lifted his chin. "What documents?" "The file box from Mom's desk," I said. "The paperwork." Evan's eyes flashed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said too quickly. Denise's representative stepped in smoothly. "Mr. Carter, all documents related to the estate must be preserved and disclosed," she said. "If items have been moved off-site, we need the location." Evan's mouth tightened. "I moved some papers to my apartment for sorting," he admitted, like he was doing everyone a favor. "For organization." Organization. Always a clean word for control. "You'll provide an itemized list and return them for inventory," the representative said, tone firm but neutral. No room for argument. Evan stared at her like he couldn't believe anyone would speak to him like that in his own house. Then he looked at me, and for a split second I saw the truth under his anger, fear. 'Cause he knew what was in those papers. Or what was missing from them. The inspection ended with a stack of signed inventory pages. Clerk packed up. Photos saved. Records made. Evan's hands were shaking by the time he signed, but he tried to hide it by pressing the pen hard enough to nearly tear the paper. When we stepped outside, the sun felt too bright. The street looked normal, kids on bikes, a dog barking somewhere, people living their lives while mine was cracked open. Jenna texted me again that night. "Evan is furious. He says you're stealing his grief." Stealing his grief. The sentence would have destroyed me a year ago. Now it just sounded like nonsense dressed up as moral language, because here's what I learned. Grief is real. But grief doesn't excuse theft. Grief doesn't excuse intimidation. Grief doesn't excuse rewriting a sibling out of existence with $1, and in the weeks that followed we got the bank records. We got emails. We got drafts. We got signatures. We got a clearer picture of what happened last spring, and how carefully Evan and my mother had structured things so the story would sound clean when the truth was ugly. I won't pretend the final outcome was perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale where I walked away with the house and Evan cried an apology under a street lamp. Real life doesn't hand out neat endings. What I did walk away with was something I'd never had in my family: proof, leverage, and the ability to choose my own peace instead of being assigned to protect theirs. In the end, changing the locks wasn't the revenge. It wasn't even the point. The point was that for the first time, when my family tried to silence me with $1, I didn't fold. I documented. I escalated. I forced transparency, and the phone was silent afterward, not because they won, but because I finally stopped picking up every time they tried to pull me back into the story where I'm the problem. I didn't need their approval. I needed my own spine, and I got it.